something awesome tonight. Look around, meet somebody new tonight. We've got an awesome speaker. I'll introduce him in a minute. But this is the House Hacker Mafia and Real Estate Investor Meetup. Tanner and I put this on. We are both investors and real estate agents. If you've got questions about investing or house hacking, come hit us up. We'd be happy to answer those questions or help you out in any way you need. Tonight, we got Johnny Malpica. He is a city planner, and he's going to talk to us all about the resources that city planning has, some of the stuff that city planning does, walk us through those resources, and then talk a little bit about ADU and AFS. Does anyone know what an AFS is? I know we probably all heard of ADU, additional dwelling unit. AFS, accessory family suite, so slightly different criteria. Certainly opens up the doors to owner-occupied owners of a single-family home and what they can do as far as adding another unit to their property. So Johnny will talk about some of those nuances. Give it up for Johnny.
I'm always afraid to speak into the microphone because during COVID, we switched from microphones to computers. And the first time I spoke into a microphone, I literally screamed at a room of 700 people. So that didn't happen, so we're off to a good start. So as Ryan said, I'm Johnny. I'm a planner with the city of Colorado Springs. Today, this is kind of, by the way, I made this in about 20 minutes, so don't judge me. Today, I'm going to go over just a brief overview of our department, what our department looks like. I'm also going to talk about me for a little bit, but also who we are as a department. I'm going to go through some of our tools and resources that are free and available to the public that people in your industry will find extremely helpful. I'm going to go into zoning districts and just an introduction into that, just the different categories with a focus on residential districts. And then, as Ryan mentioned, I'll talk about ADUs and accessory family suites and where those are permitted and what are some of the requirements for those things. Finally, at the end, I am going to talk about some of the upcoming resources and tools that we have that we're intending to roll out in about 3 to 6 months that I think are going to be really great for you and your clients or your industry in general and hopefully the public. So with that said, what is the planning department? So the planning with the new mayor, we became Planning Plus Neighborhood Services. So we are the land use review department that deals with entitlement applications. So that's development plans, that's non-use variances, that's annexations, that's zone changes, and that's a whole bunch of other things that I won't get into. The other side of the development review enterprise is the DRE, which is kind of at the building permit phase and their certificate of occupancy phase of things. And they are housed at the Regional Development Center over at 2880 International Circle, so they're really great. Then we have a long-range planning division. Our long-range planning division is responsible for drafting our comprehensive plans. So these are more visioning statements and that sort of thing. And then we also have an urban planning division, which I just moved over to, which is specifically focused on our downtown urban core, Old Colorado City, the Old North End, Goat Patch too. They fall into our area and some other things. In our department is neighborhood services, which is code enforcement, and all those folks that clean up graffiti and make our city beautiful and do some amazing things, as well as engineering development review. So we're a nice big, huge department, and that's just who we are. Also at the bottom of the screen, I don't know why I decided to use a lighter shade of blue and a darker shade of blue. That's very helpful to you all, but you know what? 20 minutes to do this. Is going to be a link to where you can literally find all this information. So if you want to write those down, that's really helpful. I said I was going to introduce me and my background, but I just want to say when you're on that first page, we have this cute little new thing that they made us do where we took photos in front of art exhibits, and you can actually, like, if you have a pre-app meeting with a planner, you speak to a planner, you get their name, and you just want to see a little bit about them, you can do that if you want. Not super exciting, but I think it's kind of cute. So I just wanted to highlight only myself here, the star of the show. No, I just felt bad putting other people's photos up in this, but if you want to go on the website, it's public information, check us out. Let's now dive into some of the tools and resources. So this is all taken from our website. So if I click into coloradosprings.gov/planning, you're going to see these same image boxes with different clickable links. one of which is submit an application. You can click into that and submit what's called a pre-application meeting. If you have a question about a property or something looks really confusing, or you have a client that's, I don't know, wants to build an ADU or knock down the house and rebuild the duplex, and you're like, man, I have no idea if we can do that, and you go and look at all the tools that I'm going to show you, and you're like, I still can't figure it out, fill out a pre-application meeting request. It is 100% free. A planner will get in touch with you within a couple days, and they'll schedule that meeting with you and your client, and it's super helpful. They're a lot of fun, and sometimes when you hear bad news, they're not so fun, but hopefully it's good news. So that's that page. And then if you scroll down a little further, here's some of the other tools that I think are really important. So what we've done is we've sort of compartmentalized this into a few different areas. So planning tools are a little bit more industry and developer focused. And then we have homeowner assistance as well. So some of the things there, if you see there's a little, can you see my cursor? No. Well, there's a thing that says Encode underneath planning tools. That is a new tool we have that houses our entire zoning code, which is this 400-page book. That's kind of hard to find things in, but there's a search feature in this. So if you're like ADU and you want to see where ADU comes up in the code, you can click into that. It also has a zoning map feature. So if you want to zoom in on a property and you're like, oh, is this R2, R4, is it R-Flex, what district is this? You can see what it is and what's around it. That's a great tool. Springs View is another GIS feature. I'm going to try to, if we have time, do a little demo on that for you all and talk a little bit about that. But you can actually look at the assessor data on the property. You can look at building permit history, overlays, and all this fun stuff. Those are probably the application and permits, or the different types of applications and permits that we have. So like at the planning level, a permit is like a revocable permit. So if you're a business and you want to put like a little seating area in front, that's a revocable permit to be in the city right of way. And then applications can be, a development application. If you're an unfortunate person who wants to put a carport in your front yard, you have to do a front yard carport permit application. Those are a lot of fun, just kidding. And then, like I said, the Encode and Springs View are really great tools. Scrolling a little bit down, homeowner assistance is just like some helpful hints. So residential accessory structures, if you want to build a shed, click on that and figure out what you can do. If you're like, I still have no idea, you can call us. And then also you'll see there's a section, a little clickable box for ADUs, and we go into all the requirements for ADUs as well as accessory family suites. If you want to Airbnb your house, short-term rental. So it's super friendly. And at the bottom, this is coloradosprings.gov/LUR Land Use Review, DRE, Development Review Enterprise. And if you've looked at all this and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, just call us. That's our information. We are open at LUR from 8 to 5. And then the DRE is open 9 to 4, and then they're closed for lunch because they're smart and give their planners lunch, which is great. We get lunch too, I'm only kidding. So again, if you call us, one of the things that you should do is try to be as descriptive as you can in your phone message. Say like, I'm Steve, I'm a realtor, and I'm calling because I have a client who wants to build an ADU. This is their lot, this is the address. Can you call me back? If you leave, and then leave your phone number. And then if you tell me a joke, I will call you back much quicker. Just kidding. But if you leave that information, what it does is it allows me to, in advance of calling you, research whatever your question is, call you back with all that pulled up. And then if you don't answer, I'm going to leave you a quick like, hey, this is the answer to your question. If you have additional questions, call me. You may not get me because I'm not the only planner. There's a lot of us, but everyone will do that. So this is our contact info. If you have a question, call us. And in some instances, if you have a really complicated question, we can't, unfortunately, sit on the phone with you all day because we have a lot of things to do. But we'll probably say, hey, here's some quick information. Fill out a pre-application meeting request. And then we'll sit down with you in person, virtually using Microsoft Office Teams, or we could do a phone meeting, or we can go on a walk if you want. I've never done that, but if anyone wants to suggest that, I'm down. We probably won't do a site visit just because city resources, but anyways, that meeting will sit down with you for a half hour to 45 minutes and go through your project in depth with you. Okay, this is our zoning map. It looks like someone vomited colors, but that's because it's all the way zoomed out. But when you zoom in, it becomes a little more clear. And so I'm not going to go into every single zone in the city because there's a lot, but I just want to go through the categories. So we have residential, right? So that's single family through multifamily and everything in between. And that also includes our agriculture district. Then we have mixed use. Now, prior to February 5th of 2023, when we finally went through this process to rewrite this code, which was a 3-year process that I was not involved with because I was in New Jersey. Thank God, just kidding. We actually had, instead of mixed use, we had commercial districts. So mixed use actually mixes together a variety of uses. It's really cool and it's a lot more progressive. Then we have industrial, public and semi-public. That's like parks, facilities. Don't worry about that. And then we have another piece of that called overlay district. So overlay is not its own zone district. It's an overlay on top of these base zones. So like the airport overlay, streamside overlay, HP, which is historic preservation, aka the Old North End, not too far from here, Hillside. If you see HS, HP, or SS, call us because there's going to be additional requirements for whatever it is you're doing. Maybe a shed, you can just do that. Then there's planned development zones, which are like individualized properties that are, they used to be called planned unit developments. Now they're called PDZs. I'm not going to focus on that. It's kind of interesting. So if you see a residential property in its zone PDZ, call us because we can't look at our zoning code to tell you what the standards are. We have to look at that initial DP and then if there's conditions on records. Unfortunately, right now, you probably need to call us to get that information. And then finally, we have what's called the FBZ, the form-based zone, which is this much smaller document that I get to work with moving into the urban planning area. And that dictates our downtown. And that's a totally different style of zoning. It's less concerned with the land use and a much more concerned with how the building facade relates to the public realm. So if you're in the FBZ and you call us, you will get to talk to me and it will be a good time or a bad time if I tell you can't do what you're trying to do. Okay, so here's our residential districts. So as I said, we have agriculture, and then we have RE, which is our estate, R19, R16, and those are our single family zone districts. Then you go into kind of 2-family, then you have multifamily, low and high, and then you have R flex districts. I'm not going to focus on R flex districts. That's a whole different story. There's not a lot of places in the city that are zoned R flex low, medium, or high, but really R5 to R2 is, if you're interested in the next thing, which is ADUs and AFSs, that's what we're going to want to talk about. Okay. Am I going too fast? Are we having a good time? Yes.
So what is it?
That's the answer. No. So an R flex district is kind of, so I mentioned before when we had our previous code that we had what's called a plan unit development. That changed to PDZ, which is planned development zone. And R flex is kind of like a rezone tool that gives you different development densities. So if you're buying like a giant piece of land and you were going to rezone it, you can think about what kind of product you want to create. And R flex low, medium, and high gives you a variety of kind of different options and different densities. So like an example would be like 25 dwelling units per acre or whatever, and different lot configurations in each of those. So it's not a zone that you're just gonna like walk down a block and be like, this is our flex, unless if you're in like one of those places that have been rezoned typically. Is that, yes?
So I had a duplex in a single family zoning, and my neighbor in the same situation. We got together, and we got our lots rezoned to R2, which was great. Tons of benefits to that. Could we now have got it rezoned to R flex? Or is R flex only like a new development zoning?
So rezones you have to be careful with rezones. That's kind of an independent process that we look at, and it really depends on does your application to rezone meet the criteria, and does it even make sense? Like if you can't just slowly start zoning your property R2 to R4 to R5 to R flex. So typically no, but it's so nuanced. It's truthfully hard to answer without looking at your property like in a pre-app and talking that through to figure out what your intentions are. I don't know if that's.
So I guess higher level, what I was asking was, can you rezone, if everything works, can you rezone to an R flex, or is R flex only for like new development, massive vacant land, and people are about to redevelop there?
I don't want to speak out of turn here because I'm not, like, I would probably need to look at the code to figure that out. but typically we have PDZ now, which is Planned Development Zone. I want to say they're mostly reserved for these newer developments. So like if you want to, if you're developing a vacant parcel that's 7 acres out on Hancock and something, and you're wanting to do, I don't know, a single family product but relatively compact lots, you might be like R-Flex medium. And then if you like want to not meet those 3 criteria, you might say, okay, I want to do PDZ. But PDZ is typically reserved for like, you want to do something really unique, like I don't know, something insane and crazy with living walls and all of these additional public benefits. But yeah, it's not like if you're an already zoned R2, you're not really going to probably zone to an R-Flex district. If that makes sense. Okay, ADUs and accessory family suites. Couple big differences. So accessory dwelling units are what it is. It's a totally separate dwelling unit. Okay, that means it's for an additional family to live in. So the way City Code defines a family is up to 5 unrelated individuals. Now, an accessory family suite is like for your mom and dad to live in when they retire, for your kids to live in when they go to college, that sort of thing. By nature, accessory family suites have to be integrated into the primary, meaning you can't build a detached accessory family suite in your yard. It needs to be attached to your primary via heated and cooled space. So that's like an addition. If you look at the graphics towards the left, an addition, a basement finish, or converting your second level into an AFS. Now, ADUs, on the other hand, come in 2 types of categories. You have detached, and then you have attached. Okay, attached is going to be the same thing as an AFS, but in that instance, you're actually basically saying, hey, I want to use this as a separate rentable space. And there's a lot of nuance when we get into that, and I'm going to talk about that as quickly as I can so I don't bore the crap out of you. But those are kind of the basics of those 2 things. Now, if you do an accessory family suite, the city makes you, let's say you're doing a basement finish in your house and you want to Airbnb it or something, and you and your partner live in the house. Technically, you could have 3 additional people live down there, and you could short-term rental it if you meet the requirements, et cetera, et cetera. But if you had like a family of 12 and you want to like add random people downstairs, that's not an AFS, that's an ADU. So I want to go into where these things are permitted because it does get a little nuanced. So I showed you a tool before called Encode. If you click into that, you'll get into this document, which is this book. And so, can you see that? Yeah, okay. So this is, at the top here, we have a matrix where you see the residential zone districts, and then you can see dwelling single family. And then the P means it's permitted in all those zone districts. Now you're going to see at the very end when you get into MXT and MXM, that's C. C means conditional use. That means that if you want to do that, it's not that it's prohibited. It just means that you have to go to City Planning Commission and convince them that what you're doing is compatible with the neighborhood. And typically in those cases, we see that in the single family zone districts that want to do an integrated ADU. Those are conditional uses. If you scroll down, you get to accessory uses, and a dwelling accessory detached would be a detached ADU, and a dwelling accessory integrated would be integrated. The A means it's permitted as an accessory use to the primary. Now, the reason why these are separated is because you can't have an ADU without a primary house. You can't have a shed on a residential lot and not have a house. You have to have the house. You also just can't park an RV on a lot in the city of Colorado Springs and live on it. You can say that's restrictive, but that is the code. So that's what this means. And again, you can go look this up yourself if you want, or you can be like, I don't feel like doing it. I'm going to call planning department and have them do it for me. Get the government to work for you, right? So what I did was I went through our code and I just kind of put together just some of the do's and don'ts of ADUs. So one of the things that typically come up, so I'm just going to try to give us a sort of example. So let's say you have an R2 lot and you have a single family house on the lot. This is kind of scary because if I get close to it, it yells at me. You have a single family house on a lot and you're like, I want to do an ADU. Well, you have 2 options in that case. You can do a duplex or you can do an ADU, a detached ADU. And say you have a garage in the back, you want to build an ADU on top. So there's a couple things that come into play there. One of which is that your lot needs to be R2, right? You can't be like, I have an R estate lot, I want to add 5 units. No, your neighbors are going to flip out if you do that. And I'm not bringing that to Planning Commission because Everyone's going to yell at me, or yell at you. It's not going to be great. So your lot needs to be zoned the correct zoning for that particular thing. In addition to that, your lot needs to meet the minimum lot size. In R2, that's 5,000 square feet. So if you have a substandard lot and you're a legal lot of record, sorry, you can't do an ADU under the current code. That could always change in the future, but right now that's the case. Another thing that comes up is the gross floor area of the accessory structures cannot exceed the primary. So let's say you're like, I want to do an ADU, but you have 75 sheds in your yard, which no one has, but let's say you did. You'd probably be exceeding lot coverage and you probably can't build something else. Which is why, if you want to build an ADU, you should do a pre-application meeting because it's free and we'll give you literally a full pre-app summary for you to take with you and talk to your client or whomever, or yourself, or your architect, and you have that guiding document. Another thing that I want to say too is you cannot use a vehicle as an ADU. So you can't park an RV in the yard and be like, yep, my ADU. You can drive the RV to the mountains and sleep in it and then never come back here. But no, I'm just kidding. Only jokes. Please come back. We need your sales tax dollars. Just kidding. So another thing to mention right now is, and this is, I'm going to talk about changes to the code in a little bit, but ADUs can't be in the front yard right now. So if in old Colorado City, there's a lot of these smaller houses that are like 900 square feet. And we've done this thing a couple times in the previous code where we did what we call flipping the primary, where people built a new big house or a normal size house by American standards and then turned their ADU into the accessory dwelling unit. This is something that may change in the near future, but right now you can't do that in our new code. Finally, and the most confusing piece of all of this is that the ADU can be 50% of your primary structure, or if your primary structure is less than 1,500 square feet, you can do 750. But remember the first part of code where the sum of all your accessory structure, or not the first part of code, but the first part of this slide here, sum of all your accessory structures can't exceed the primary. So these are the little nuanced things that when you're doing something like this, you really need to pre-app and talk to us because we want to make sure that you're going to go to building permit and we're going to look at it and go, oh my God, you did exactly what we told you, high five, and you get an approved building permit and it makes your life go a lot quicker and then you can actually build your ADU. So those are some of the quick tips. I think this is truthfully a slide that I totally forgot to finish, but we're all human, we're not infallible. Okay, one other thing I want to mention, because this comes up a lot, specifically in the real estate sector, and this is why our phones are great resources and tools, is what we call a lot of record. So a lot of record, I'm not going to read the definition, but in February 13th of 1951, Colorado Springs adopted its first Unified Development Code. That Unified Development Code required that all lots be platted lots, okay? That means that you have to plat your lot in accord with minimum sizes, minimum widths, et cetera, et cetera. So in old Colorado City, you see a bunch of smaller lots that are historically platted lots. They were just platted really small back in the day. So what a lot of people did, and this is not a good thing, don't ever do this, is they cut their lots up and sold their neighbor half their lot. That is an illegal subdivision. You cannot do that. Do not do that. However, if you did that before February 13th of 1951, you have a lot of record. And then if we talk about the city and how the city has grown and how we've annexed different parcels, let's say you existed outside of the city before February 13th of 1951, or you're in the Broadmoor and you were de-annexed and then re-annexed into the city and it gets complicated, then you just should call us because we'll tell you what you need to do and what you need to provide so that we can establish your lot as a legal lot of record. We see a lot of stuff really on the west side of old Colorado City where you just, it's like the Wild West out there. The lots, it's like, what the heck happened here? So I just want to kind of show you what that looks like from our perspective because this comes up. So when you look at a property and you see the legal description, the first one, which is Lot 14, Block 3, Parish Edition, Colorado Springs, is a lot of record. Very obviously. It's a platted lot. I don't need to do anything else. I go, great job. You have a wholly platted lot, and you can do whatever you want to do within what code allows you to do. The second one says that is a portion of Lot 14. It's the eastern half of Lot 13 and Lot 14, Block 125. So that's dicey. We have to look at that and see when that subdivision occurred. And then the last one is crazy. And these are real legal descriptions. But what's interesting about the last one is that this is actually a platted lot. That's because the applicant called me and we fixed it. So this is just some stuff to be aware of. If you see a legal description that looks really long and your applicant wants to build additional things on that lot, you're going to have a hard time getting a building permit if you don't have a platted lot and prove the lot of record status. So do a pre-app with us, talk to us, and we'll talk to you about what that looks like and try to solve it. Now, if you're in a residential zone and you don't have a lot of record, but you meet minimum lot size and lot width, you can do what's called a waiver of replat in some instances, which avoids replatting the whole lot, which is another process. So there's solutions if you are like, oh my God, I don't have a lot of record. Now I can never live in my house. And so there's a bunch of solutions, but this is something to look at if you're intending to get a building permit for really anything. Maybe if you're like doing a deck, you can obviously build a deck. We're not going to be like, hey, you don't have a lot of record for a deck. So that's kind of one of the last things I wanted to talk about. And then the last thing is just a couple of the upcoming resources that we have coming down our pipeline that I just wanted to talk about. So Unified Development Code, we're doing what's called a scrub, right? They rewrote the code after, I don't know, 30 or something years, way overdue. When you rewrite a 400-page document, there's going to be some things that maybe in reality don't work out. And so we are looking at those things. We have a giant, I say we, I'm not doing this. This is someone else's job. But I do contribute to it. But we have a big document of things that we are changing just to make it more reasonable. Our form-based zone, our form-based code is also going through the same process. And then finally, we have this amazing feature that's really awesome that I cannot show you yet because it's not published, called Development Tracker, which is going to be on the city's website. It's going to be a map, and it's going to outline the city in the different planning areas. And you can click into each of those zones and see what active developments, projects are currently occurring, and things that have happened maybe in the last year or so. So that's going to be a really helpful tool, I think, and also improve our transparency with our processes. We're looking at changing some of our public notice procedures as well. So anytime a development application comes in, it is not a secret. People come all the time and say, you guys did this in secret. First of all, we didn't do it. Number two, we publicly notice all projects based on the requirements. So within 1,000 feet buffer distance of every project, we'll send you a postcard in your mail. In addition to that, we'll also require that the applicant post something on the site. So if you're walking around downtown at night and you see my name, don't throw anything at it because it's not nice. Just kidding. And then finally, there's just state legislation. I don't know if you're paying attention to the news, but last year there was a bill in front of the House that went to what we call like the legislation graveyard, basically controlling all the jurisdictions in Colorado Springs and saying you need to do ADUs in all districts by right. I'm not going to get into my political opinion about that, but if that happens, because there's another similar bill this year, our zoning code is going to have a compliance requirement to basically change to influence that. So with that said, when we give you a pre-application meeting summary for a project, we're gonna stand behind that for 6 months. But if you call back in a year and that has changed because of state legislation or we've updated the code, I'm sorry, but things change. Typically, things go in a more progressive direction, though, not backwards, but you never know. That's really my whole presentation. I really hope you found some of this informative, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Like I said, you can always call us. Oh, I also brought some of these handouts, which are free and on our website. You can find them. I'll give you $5. Just kidding. But this is accessory family suites, accessory dwelling units, detached and integrated. So there's like, I don't know, 6 of these. The city doesn't have a lot of cash right now, so I can only afford 6. Questions?
So, what if you get approved for ADU or like a cottage, but if your cottage is bigger than your house, do you have to re-zoning on that?
So, don't do that. That's not good. There's certain situations where we could potentially provide some entitlement document solution to that. Those are very minimal. In a lot of cases, if you massively mess something up, you will have to demo it. So like, yeah, you can't deliberately just build whatever you want. By the way, planning doesn't enforce the code. We have code enforcement that does that. So I don't have to. I'm not an imposing individual. At least I don't think I am. I'm not coming out to your site and being like, hey man, you have to remove this because it's illegal. But don't do that. That's really bad, and you'll just create a giant headache for yourself and also me or whoever planner you get, and it won't be great. Typically, yeah, yes.
So I just finished an ADU. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Affordable
Housing, everyone.
Is
Clap for.
is there a rationale? It was not.
I know. We can talk about that too if you want.
Is there rationale for why either it was just my particular one, or do ADUs have to have their own address?
That's a really good question. So I didn't jump into like all the details of what a pre-app summary for an ADU is about a half hour, which is why I didn't go into it. But ADUs don't have to have their own address. They can, or you can do like, I don't know, 260 East Kiowa and a half.
Sure. Okay, it was probably just my comment. It just became. We also have a corner lot, which means the entrance is in our backyard, but it's on the side on a different street, so that could also be why. But
yeah.
I didn't go to said meeting because I had contractors do it all, but it's fine.
So the other thing I will say too is addressing is handled by enumerations. I hate doing this because it's like, oh, we don't do that. Go to this other government department. But it is true. Enumerations, which is housed through regional building department, handles addressing. But yes, you don't have to separately address your ADU. You can, and you might want to. The same thing is with utility metering. Like you can do totally separate utility lines to it if you want, or you can link into the existing one if you want to. Is there another?
So on the topic of zoning again, first of all, thanks so much for the slides.
Sure.
Second of all, on the topic of rezoning, how amenable are you guys to rezoning? Like if I come to you and I say, hey, I have this, half acre lot in R19 zoning, and I convert this lot to R2, are you going to tell me to go screw, or are you going to tell me like, all right, let's work this out?
Well, as a government official, I would never tell you to go screw. So rezones, the really short answer to that is rezones get really complicated because typically if you're, let's say you're, in short, to give you an answer, if you're an R19 property, everything around you is R19, and you are like, I don't care about all these people and the fact that they bought into this residential single-family neighborhood. I want to do R2. Then the answer is you're not being nice to your neighbors. You're a bad boy. Get at no. In that case, what you'd be asking is to do something that's kind of referred to as spot zoning, which is to rezone a property for the interest of an individual rather than the neighborhood, and we would probably say no. Now, let's say you live in a neighborhood that's transitioning and you live across the street's R4 and down the block is R2 and then it's MXL the next block over. That's a different scenario, and we would have to evaluate that on a case-by-case basis. But a rezone, just know this, I'm not making, you call me, I'm not gonna be like, hey, this is a great idea, you should do it. I'm gonna be like, why do you wanna do this? Let's look at the surrounding context. Let's look at the criterion code for the rezone. And then I'm gonna say, okay, here's what we think. And then we're going to walk you through an application that Planning Commission is going to approve and City Council, not us. We're gonna say, they meet criteria or we don't think they meet criteria, and then you're going to present that to that dais and they're going to vote on it and ultimately make that decision. And your neighbors are also in some instances going to show up to that meeting and be like, this is awesome, or don't do this, and there's going to be some dialogue in some instances.
Thanks.
Sure. I see one hand way in the back that went up, and then you could go next.
As a follow-up to that one, so if the rezoning from R1 to R2 is possible, it would make sense locationally. Is there a way to operate within public gray space to have an ADU or a non-occupied Airbnb in an R1 area?
Okay, look, that's that's a multifaceted question. So let's hit the short-term rental part first. Non-owner occupied short-term rentals in the city of Colorado Springs, in order to obtain one, you need to be 500 feet away from another one. Is that the most equitable way of giving out non-owner occupied short-term rentals? Maybe not necessarily, but does it prevent entire blocks from turning into vacation towns and communities? It does. So that is going to depend on if your home is, in a place that is 500 feet away from those other short-term rentals, then yes, you can get a non-owner occupied short-term rental permit. If not, then you need to be in the home. And there's a whole webpage that talks about that. And if you're confused, call us. With the ADU, in an R16 zone district, if you want to do a detached ADU, you cannot. It's totally prohibited. And right now, you cannot get that ADU is a use standard under accessory standards in the code. You can't request like what we call a variance to a use standard. What you could do is an integrated ADU, is you could build an addition on your house and attach it. That's still a conditional use. You still have to go to planning commission, but that's, a conditional use just means we're going to look at it and evaluate it based on what you're proposing and ensure that it's compatible, not that it's not permitted. So the short answer is probably no, and then the short-term rental thing is kind of like another component, a separate but related component to that. I hope that answered your question. Did it? Yeah? Yeah. Office residential. Office residential is a very kind of unique zone in the city. I want to say it's probably the smallest. It is mixed use by definition. It's so the part of like, I don't know if it's quite the old North End, but part of sort of like Weber up to Weber Street is where we have office residential. Where that was applied in a lot of places is where you saw like kind of a traditional down block that was residential for a really long time kind of start to convert into offices. And then this is just a zone that sort of fit that particular area. So it is mixed use, but it's kind of a nuanced mixed use zone district. Oh, maybe it's with me. No, okay. Well, yes. For sure. So short-term rentals, what you want to do is you'll go to I'm going to see if I can show you. All right. No. All right. You know what? Yeah. So I don't know what's going on. Oh, now it's working. That's cute. These are the city computers, by the way. So no, I'm just kidding. This works fine. But yeah, go to the planning website, our coloradosprings.gov website. Literally, if you Google short-term rental coloradosprings.gov, like make sure you put coloradosprings.gov, because if you Google short-term rental Colorado, you're going to get Airbnb and 75 other things. Just click that link, and there's short-term rentals at coloradosprings.gov email. You can email questions to. It is pretty backlogged right now, I'm not going to lie, so it does take a few minutes. Or you can call us, and we'll help you answer those questions. Now, if you want to find out if you qualify for a non-owner occupied short-term rental, you have to call us, because we don't publicly display where those are for security reasons and people's privacy. So you have to call us, and we'll let you know. We won't lie to you, I promise. What's up? Yeah, no, I'm from the local government.
You can also email, they'll email you back, they're just going to tell you where the other ones are.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, email us, call us, do both. We'll call and email you back. If you call us, we, like I said before, leave your name, leave your phone number to call you back on. And then also try to state your phone number more than once if you can, because things are, get cut off. And then give us the address and the information, and we'll be able to call you back and give you an answer. All right, I think that's it. Sweet, fun stuff.
Thanks, Johnny. All right, a couple closing thoughts. One, if you are interested in short-term rentals, move over here before it starts yelling at us. Tanner and I every day ask the city if they're eligible or not, and we've got a whole list of those. So if you're interested in that list, I feel like it's about to make a terrible sound.
I felt like that the whole time.
It's echoing.
So if I gave a bad presentation,
Well, that was great, and I really enjoyed your humor. If you're interested in that list, then reach out to us. We can hook you up with that. As far as rezoning goes, what worked well is that is a long process with a lot of meetings, and public meetings, and posting things in your front yard. And I paid a guy to do it, and he took care of all of it. And he, yeah, it was well worth it. So that's some advice on that. Stick around, network, meet somebody new. Thanks for coming out, y'all.